Chapter 11 of our text deals with the subject matter of managing conflict. We've looked at a definition, what is conflict, looked at conflict styles, we looked at conflict in relational systems. Now we get to variables in conflict styles. All right, so every relational system is unique. There's certain family patterns that occur within communication patterns that occur in family, business, in the classroom. Now we look at two variables that do affect the way people manage conflict. The first is gender and the second is culture. So let's look at gender first. So there is some research that suggests that men and women often approach conflict situations differently. And this may be due to the way we've been socialized. Teenage boys often engage in verbal showdowns and very often physical fights, whereas teenage girls gossip, backbite, and also use social exclusion when approaching conflict. A survey of college students seem to suggest that these stereotypes that we find in adolescence continue in among young adults as well. Female students describe men as being concerned with power and more interested in content than in their relational issues. Sentences that are used to describe male conflict styles includes the following. The most important thing to males is their ego. Men don't worry about feelings. Men are more direct. In contrast, women were described as being more concerned with maintaining the relationship during the conflict. The sentences used to describe female conflict styles include: women are better listeners, women try to solve problems without controlling the other person, and females are more concerned with others' feelings. So, in contrast with this extreme view, another body of research suggests that gender differences in handling conflict are rather small, rather minor between men and women. Research seems to suggest that men and women may be more similar than different in resolving conflict. So people may think that there are greater differences in male and female ways of handling conflict than actually exist. So people who assume that men are aggressive and women are accommodating may notice behavior that reinforce these stereotypes. On the other hand, behavior that doesn't fit these preconceived notions, accommodating men and pushy women, seems to go unnoticed. John Gottman, after studying heterosexual marriages for years, wanted to know if gay and lesbian couples have the same conflict patterns as heterosexual partners. In his extensive study, it revealed that same-sex couples approach conflicts far less negatively than male-female partners. And so this lack of hostility seems to create positive communication patterns and rituals in which same-sex partners are able to hear each other's complaints less defensively. And so he wondered why do same-sex couples manage conflict more constructively? He speculates that their relationships don't have as many of the power struggles that come from traditional male and female sex roles. So when it comes to managing household labor, housekeeping arguments, of course, can be especially strong in the heterosexual relationships where gender norms about domestic responsibilities come into play. But in same-sex relationships, these chores, these are not sources of destructive conflict or behavior. So we looked at gender. Secondly, we looked at culture. So by and large, people all around the world prefer mutually beneficial resolutions. They want both people to win. They want win-win solutions. Nonetheless, the way in which people communicate during conflict certainly does vary, not only by gender, but also by culture. Cultures differ in their orientation toward disagreement. Is it to be avoided or is it acceptable? Rapport management. How important is it to ensure relationship maintenance? And the preservation of face. Is it vital to preserve dignity for self and the other party? So, ways of managing conflict that are what is the norm in one culture may look odd to outsiders. And so the direct communication style that characterizes many low context North American and Western European cultures is not the norm in the other parts of the world. So assertiveness may be perfectly appropriate to this part of the world, but in Asian countries it just doesn't work. Members of individualistic cultures often prefer competing as a conflict style, whereas members of collectivistic cultures prefer the styles of compromising and problem solving. East Asian cultures tend to avoid confrontation, placing a premium on preserving and honoring the face of the other person. So this self-restraint in Japan, in other parts of the world, is certainly very common. It's all the same attitude toward conflict aversion prevails in China. The three most common methods of persuasion are hinting, setting an example by one's own actions, and strategically agreeing to whatever pleases the other, even if the consequences are negative. However, these approaches appear to be changing. Younger adults in China favor collaborative problem solving more than the elders do. And they acknowledge that conflicts do have value for achieving one's goals and improving relationships. Caucasians were more likely than Asian Americans and African Americans to say that conflict could have a positive effect on relationships. Asian Americans tend to be more withdrawn in conflict, while Hispanic and Latino Americans tend to be more assertive. The very last section in this chapter deals with conflict management in practice.